Chapter 18 of Heat, page 124. Carlos had his own lives separate from his brother's. Here was one. He had not worked at Hector's Bronx Cafe for a few weeks now. Here was another. At night, when Michael thought he was bussing tables at Hector's, Carlos was working outside Yankee Stadium, scalping tickets to the Yankees games, as afraid of being spotted by his brother as by the police. And finally, the Whopper with cheese. His boss for his new job as ticket scalper, the one who actually dealt with the broker who somehow owned the tickets, was a young man named Ramon Crespo, the same Ramon he had stolen Mrs. Cora's purse. Carlos had met him a few nights after he got laid off at Hector's. He had done nothing wrong, the manager assured him. He had been one of the best workers since his first night on the job, but business was slower than they expected, even after the Yankee games, and some of the waiters had agreed to take a cut in salary than be the ones laid off, and so the busboys had to go. Carlos was out of a job at a time when he had a secret drawer full of past due bills in the apartment. But I need this job, he had said to the manager, a man named Jose Guzman. You told me you worked at the Imperio, Mr. Guzman said. How much can a boy your age need a second job? We have bills to pay at home. I'm sure your father will find a way to provide, Mr. Guzman said, and if things change around here, I'll be sure to call you. You don't understand, Carlos wanted to say. I am the father, even if I'd give anything to just be the son again. To have somebody take care of me the way I take care of Michael. For the next few months, he got dressed as if he were going to Hector's. He senator's cap on his head, and walked down to 158th Street instead, hanging around with boys from the neighborhood who would stand in front of Stan's Sports World. Somebody would always have a transistor radio to listen to the Yankees game, even though they were the first to try to guess what was happening inside when they heard the noise of the crowd, before the announcers would tell them what had happened. One night he was listening to one of the boys on the corner tell the story of how he had cried in front of the judge in juvenile court, boo-hoo-hoo, getting a laugh now by touching his tongue to his cheek and leaving a wet mark there, and how the nice woman judge had actually let him off. I wouldn't have been there at all if this stupid kid hadn't clipped me with the lucky throw. Carlos couldn't help himself. He isn't stupid, he said, and it wasn't lucky. Ramon gave him a little nod with the chin. How would you know? That kid is my kid brother, he said. He shouldn't have said anything, but he was in a bad mood, and this Ramon, with his slick black hair tied back in a ponytail in the back, reminded him of a weasel. He was wearing a 50-cent t-shirt and basketball shorts that were long enough and baggy enough to be a skirt. The purse snatcher didn't look so tough to Carlos if he wanted to be on. Carlos was ready to throw down with him. He even felt his fist clenching behind his back. Ramon looked Carlos up and down like he were some kind of item in a store window he was thinking of buying, his face almost curious. Suddenly he laughed. You're right, he said. It wasn't a lucky throw. That boy's arm is like crazy. You don't seem too mad about it, Carlos said. Ramon shrugged. Easy come, easy go, he said. Besides, I don't have to steal old ladies' purses no more. I got myself a real job now. Then he told Carlos and the rest of the guys in the corner about the scalper he had met at Stan's the week before, what he called the primo tickets the man had access to. How, on good nights, his cut of those tickets could be as much as $50. Later on, when it was just Carlos and Ramon walking up 158th Street, Carlos on the lookout for Michael even then, even knowing Michael was home listening to the Yankees game on the radio, Ramon said, You know what, $50 in this neighborhood? 2 purses sometimes. That's what. And more than I was making at Hector's, Carlos thought. Then he heard himself saying to the purse thief who bragged about fooling a judge in juvenile court who didn't seem to be afraid of the official persons or anything else, "How could I get a job like yours?" Ramon smiled a smile that reminded Carlos not of a weasel, but of a cartoon shark. "When can you start?" Ramon said. Mr. Minu said he had a friend who had a friend at El Diario, the Spanish paper in New York, who was making some calls to Havana, trying to see if there was somebody down there who would be willing to help track down Michael's birth certificate. As Mr. Minu said, he had talked to Mr. Gibbs, the ACS man, about maybe contacting the Little League in Havana, finding someone sympathetic in what Mr. Minu called Michael's plight. The ACS man, meanwhile, was supposed to come to the apartment tomorrow and meet Manny's crazy Uncle Timo. Tomorrow was also the day the Clippers' first playoff game against the Rosedale Park Robins, to be played in Macomb Dam Park. Anthony Fierro would start in Michael's place, trying to make sure the Clippers hung in there until they got Michael back. If they got Michael back. "You know what's going to happen?" Michael said to Manny. "Somebody's going to come up with a stupid birth certificate of mine, but it's not going to happen until after the season's over. Wait and see." "Well, there's a pretty great example of what my mom calls the power of positive thinking," Manny said. They were sitting at home team's bench at McComb's. Mr. Minya was having insisted that Michael come to practice. "They may not let you play," Mr. M had said, "but you're still part of the team." Problem was, Michael didn't feel like part of the team. "Look at it this way," Manny said. "Once you get out of the field, it only hurts for a little while." "How do you know?" Michael said. "I don't," Manny said. "It sounded like something I thought I should say." He stood up. "Come on, let's go out to the old rocket launcher. See if it's still firing up cylinders." "I know. I told you this before," Michael said. "But you sure can't talk." Then they went outfield in the bright sun, Michael on the mound, ready to go into the windup. Manny in his crouch behind the plate, all the green grass around them, and Michael was throwing and Manny was catching and saying, "Wow, oh boy," or just about every pitch, the way they had so many other times. Better times than these, Michael thought. Before they seemed to be something bad happening just about every single day. He went into the high kick, tried to put everything he had into the next pitch, and did something to Manny he had just had to do from time to time, when they both knew they had thrown 180 miles per hour. Knocked the best friend he had in the whole world on his butt again. Laid him right out if he'd run over him. Michael took a few steps in from the mound, knowing Manny was just lying there to make it more of a show. "You okay?" Manny's head came up first, big smile on his face. "I swear, I must have blacked out after the ball hit the glove," he said. "It was like you tried to throw one through everybody who's been busting your chops." Michael walked all the way to the plate, reached down with his left hand to help Manny up. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. "That's my change-up." "Cute," Manny said. From behind the screen, he heard a girl's voice say, "Hey, hey, you guys." They turned around. Ellie. He couldn't even remember how many days it had been since they'd actually seen her, and now here she was, as if they all had an appointment to meet behind the plate on this day. And here she was saying, "You guys," but looking right at Michael, who looked right back at her and knew in the moment how much he had missed her. Not that he was going to admit that to her, or Manny. Michael would wonder later why he said what he said, why he would want to hurt her feelings, why he didn't let Manny do the talking the way he always let Manny do the talking, why he would want to sound like a whole different person. Hey, it's Miss Gonzalez, he said. Come to slum it up with us ordinary guys? Right away, Manny stepped in front of him, like he was cutting in on Michael in line, and said, Hey, Ellie. He only paused long enough to stick an elbow into Michael's side and say, That was sweet before he started walking in Ellie's direction. She was wearing a Nike t-shirt and white jeans. Her sneakers were pink Nike swoosh, looked brand new. Michael saw she had brought her baseball glove with her. You got time to play a little, Manny said. But Ellie wasn't looking at Manny or acting as if she even heard him. She was looking at Michael. You know, she said. Yeah? How? They showed you on TV, he said, the other night. With your sister. Manny said, Okay then, so now everybody knows who everybody is. We can stop wearing our name tags. Manny made a motion like he was wiping sweat off his forehead. Whew! There's a relief. Ellie was still ignoring him. You're mad that I didn't tell you myself? Michael said. Who, me? Why would I be mad about a little thing like you lying to me? He still sounded like somebody else, and still didn't care. He felt like he was in some silly schoolyard fight, just with words, and wanted to beat her to the punch. Out of the side of her mouth, Manny said, Aw, man, don't go there. I didn't lie, Ellie said. I just didn't tell you everything. Do you tell everybody all your secrets? What does that mean? Michael said. What does what mean? About secrets. I was just saying. It's different, Michael said. You're his daughter. That's exactly why I didn't tell you. Blah, 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 Manny said. What? You didn't think you'd like you for yourself if we knew who you really were? They were still talking through the fence, Ellie making no move to walk around to where he was standing behind the plate. Like we're strangers all over again, Michael thought. Something like that, Ellie said. We liked you because we liked you, Michael said. Another thing we'd wonder later, why he dug in like this, like he was digging a hole of those spikes on his into the batter's box. Nobody ever does, she said. We're not everybody, Michael said. Boy, Manny said, still trying to lighten everything up. You can say that again. You don't understand how hard it is being his daughter, she said. I wish that was the worst problem I had, Michael said. That's not what I meant. It was stupid to keep it from us, Michael said. He knew he sounded like a jerk, that he didn't even sound like himself. Carlos liked to say that his little brother would walk around the block to avoid hurting someone's feelings. Now he was doing that to Ellie on purpose. So now I'm stupid, she said. Anything else? I don't think my jerk friend meant to call you stupid, Manny said. Did you, jerk ball friend? No, he's right, Ellie said. I think mostly I was stupid to come here today. She didn't run away this time, she walked. Manny gave Michael about the meanest look you'd ever seen, then said, Ellie, wait. All she did was wave an arm like, leave me alone. She kept walking across the basketball courts and up the hill, never once looking back.